first it is know what you were created for. Like I can't live this diverse life and go where God has led me if I wasn't first settled in what he put me on this earth for. You have got that identity piece is crucial because from that everything else flows.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to episode 61 of the Daron Earlewine Podcast. It's week 2 of our Divided series, where we're taking 3 weeks to take a look at what does it mean for us to be people who can build bridges relationally across the great divides of our culture. And you've probably heard this saying, right, that to get someone's perspective, right, you got to kind of walk a mile in their shoes or maybe see the world through their lens. That's a big part of our 3-week conversation where we're talking about the lenses in which we see the world. In this episode, I get to sit down with my friend Lena Morris. I've known Lena for years, and she has multiple different lenses that her life has given her than me. And it's been such a blessing through all the years to be friends with her because she's allowed me to see the world through her eyes. And what it's done for me, it's developed so much more empathy, so much more understanding, so much more knowledge to be used to be a bridge builder. I think you're going to enjoy the conversation. I think you're going to learn from it. And I'm excited to hear back from you and what you're learning, maybe ways that God's equipped you to build bridges. And we're going to pull in some of the our understanding of spiritual DNA into this conversation this week and next, which I'm excited about, as Lena and I talk about how God has uniquely equipped her to be a bridge builder, specifically as she would do it. You're not going to build bridges like Lena does. You're not going to build bridges like I do. But I hope this episode encourages and inspires you to be the kind of bridge builder that God's created you to be. I think you're going to enjoy it. Let's jump into the interview right now. Hey, welcome to week 2 of our Divided series here on the Daron Earlewine Podcast. Excited to sit down with my good friend, Lena Morris. Lena, how are you doing?
I'm good. And you?
I'm wonderful. Welcome to the new and improved Daron Earlewine Podcast set.
I like it.
You like it?
Mm-hmm.
You were saying before we pushed record there that you might steal some of the ideas for your new house.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to go to a certain store locally and get the items versus ordering
them online was a decent choice when we did it. Enough about that. Congratulations on your new house, by the way.
Thank you.
That's not what our podcast is about, but I just want to celebrate with you.
Appreciate you.
So, Lena, we're talking over this past month here on the podcast. Kind of the series is called Divided, and we actually got the inspiration from a sermon that we did a couple months ago, and I set us up last week and just talked about the divide in our country, and it's not even think it's just our country; it's globally in a lot of ways. Most of us are divided amongst lots of different lines. It feels like everything is very polarizing, whether we're talking about politics, whether we're talking about race, whether we're talking about class. I mean, all the way around. And I really think it is part of our privilege, and I would even, I think, say responsibility as followers of Christ to find ways to build bridges, to actually find ourselves in the middle, to bring people together. But that's not easy to do. It's very uncomfortable, which is fine because usually outside our comfort zones where we really grow, right? Mm-hmm. But what I wanted to do is have a conversation with you, and then next we're going to have a conversation with a friend of mine, Julie Tornquist, and just try to give, I guess, our audience an opportunity to see through someone else's lens, to see what that might do to us. Because I talked in the last episode, and it was, we talked about it that Sunday at the church service, is that I think sometimes we don't even realize how many lenses we're viewing a certain situation or a certain reality or viewpoint in life in, and so many lenses that are bringing things out of focus before we ever get to what might be the Jesus lens. And so I've known you very well. We've had tons of these conversations that I've loved for the past, since 2008, as our friendship goes back. But this is going to be one of the first conversations that we get to invite the audience into. So give everybody just a little overview of who you are and a little bit about your individual lens and how you see the world.
Okay. Well, I am a single mother of twin 18-year-old boys. I have been born and raised in Indiana, went to college in Kentucky. I took my first job out of college in the Twin Cities at a Fortune 500 company there. And then I've kind of come back and settled on the north side, but have kept my roots in the urban community. And my job now for the last 8 years has placed me in the rural community. So my lens kind of spans from urban, suburban, now rural. And then an additional lens is of, Christianity, the lens through Christ. And then also there's a few lenses of race, class, and power.
Yeah. Which that's, I mean, just right there. I mean, those are a lot of lenses that as you see anything, whether it's something in the news, something in the neighborhood, something in your life, something at work, like those lenses you're seeing through. And the thing that's interesting about that is, I mean, your lens forms the way you think and respond to. And it's like, what I think about in nanoseconds, how much your brain is seeing things from the way you've always seen it, from the perspective that you have. And sometimes if we're not even paying attention to that,
Right.
I mean, we put ourselves in such of a deficit of thinking that this is probably the way it is.
And I would just honestly say that I'm aware of my lenses because my life and the way it's been designed, and kind of even what I do professionally and how I see people in the community and all that good stuff is because it's been intentional, right? And I've had to do the work to make sure I know which lens I'm looking out of or how I'm responding. But I think most people don't realize what those lenses are and then the impact that they could have, if they focus them and adjust them and kind of out of that live their life. So I think a lot of people have these various lenses, but the difference is if you're aware and your intentionality on how you're going to impact people, community, and ultimately the kingdom through the lenses that ultimately you've been allowed to, see through.
Well, what I feel like I've been noticing, and some of it, is quotes from people in my past, maybe they're teachers. I mean, some of it's even my dad and different things, the ways that he would respond to certain situations in life is, I guess maybe I'm irritated sometimes by noticing how quickly I think I'm right about something. And you know what I mean? Like, well, that's just stupid because fill in the blank, and realizing, well, actually, I only have my perspective on whatever that is, but how quickly I can go back to my corner of like, no, that's the way it is.
Right.
And I love the quote that I don't know who said this first, right? There's three sides to every story, right? Like there's your side, there's my side, then there's the truth.
Right.
And if we're looking to try to help people get to places of truth, what are some of those steps? I guess you're saying awareness that you have your side of a perspective and it may not be true. Is that step one, maybe?
Well, awareness is certainly up there, but compassion, honestly, first and foremost, the compassion to understand that people are experiencing life very differently than you. And so before you can even talk about awareness, like a heart of compassion, period, toward human beings that might be going through and experiencing life different than you. Right. So there's that. And then there is that compassion piece. And then there's that piece of choice. I'm going to choose, right, to look through the lens and respond differently. So there's a few things that go along with the awareness and the compassion. It's a choice. So you can I know a number of people that are aware of the lenses and are aware of different perspectives and things of that nature. But if it's not impacting them directly, they have no skin in the game. So nothing compels them to act differently.
I was just reading a book the other day. It's actually the new book by Erwin McManus, one of my favorite authors, and it's called The Genius of Jesus. And he talks about one of the points, and maybe the greatest point of Jesus's genius was empathy. And he makes a quote in there. He says that empathy is the highest form of intelligence. And I thought it was a strong statement, but the more I think about it, I think there's a ton of truth to that, of how much empathy should be such a major part of our life if we are Christ followers. But my observation is even within a lot of Christian circles over the past couple of years, I don't feel like that we're necessarily maybe excelling at empathy.
Right.
What do you think are some of the things that keep us from coming to that place of awareness and maybe moving to a place of empathy? What is that? What is that? The core of that, you think?
Probably, once again, the core of it is really the impact of being empathetic in our relationships, right? So for me, I do professional development.
Yeah.
And in the corporate world, the professional world, empathy has been hot for the last, 5, 6 years.
Okay.
And it is the essence of what everybody says we have to have when we build great teams. Now, how can the world talk about empathy and we miss it in the church?
Yeah.
It should start with us, right?
Yeah.
It should flow with us. But the reality is, in the corporate world, we have to be more intentional about that because we want to build better teams to get to the end results. Everybody knows what the end results are. I think our inattention to what the end results are for the kingdom and relationship building in the church is why we easily skip over empathy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I'm wondering too, like, one thing I think is difficult is some of the lenses we wear within the Christian community is, I feel like your denomination, right? It's like a denomination exists because somebody felt like something was so important that they were actually so right on that they needed to leave some other Christians and put their stake in the ground of, this is what we really believe. We're obviously right in this. So that almost becomes like that's a lens that we no longer even try to be aware of. And we're very confident that we have to defend it and stay strong in it. And I just wonder if sometimes maybe in the church, because we feel like some of those lenses have their roots in like absolute truth, even though it's probably still seen from our perspective, right? Is maybe we are reluctant to actually become aware of those lenses and how maybe we're missing someone else's perspective that could lead us to greater truth. And maybe in the workplace, it's easier because we're trying to come together and we're trying to, the profit's the bottom line. And I don't necessarily maybe feel like if I'm working for, an electric company that I've really, really got to fight for something that I feel is like a distinctive in my life because it's just my job. And yeah, we should get together so we can make sure we hit the sales quota. I don't know. I do think there's a part where we feel like we're defending more than we would. I mean, in the church, we feel like we're protecting more of our faith framework or something.
I don't necessarily feel like we're protecting it, right? It is the thing we identify most with, right?
Okay.
So, and what our identity, we attach that to value.
Yes.
Right? So if we feel like we're part of the right denomination, it has less to do about the results and more about what I'm attached to. And if what I'm attached to is more, better than or the right way or the only way. And generally what it comes down to is preferred way. Like once we get past the foundation of Christ,
yes,
everything else is your preference.
Did you hear that growing up in the church? I can remember I grew up in the Wesleyan denomination, and I can remember jokes people would say about, like, you know what I mean? Well, that's the way the Baptists do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like something like, and it was always, and as a kid, it was like, yeah, we make jokes about other people because we're cool, but then realizing, oh, wait a second. No, we were putting down other denominations, therefore saying we're actually the only ones that really do Christianity right.
Right.
So what denomination did you grow up in, and do you feel like that there was that same kind of groupthink in that vein of Christianity?
Yes. So I love to say this all the time because, most of the time you can just say, I was Pentecostal, right? But no, we had to take it another step. I'm apostolic Pentecostal, honey. So that meant we really knew the Lord, right?
Yeah.
Like he was our, like, everything. And if you didn't know him like we did, then honey, you didn't know him at all. So, most of the time, honestly, we didn't make fun of other ones because we had plenty of internal jokes we could make about our own denomination, right? I mean, and I know it's not right, but still to this day, kids mock what they see, right? Yeah. So we mock what we see in the walls and the relationships and the things like that we built up. But I can remember, when I went to college, and it's just hilarious, I went to college. And I remember there was a group of us, and we were Apostolic Pentecostal. We were Church of God in Christ. And I mean, there was like 4 or 5 different ones, right?
Okay.
And we all just knew we felt good worshiping together, going to church and holding each other accountable. But every once in a while, that conversation of denomination would come up. Now, over the years, relationship knocked that down for us. Like our relationship with one another, we stopped having more of our conversations, started to be about relationship and just being there for one another, praying for one another, holding each other accountable so we could get through college and, still just, be on mission for what God sent us there to do. But in the beginning, there would be times that we would just all be hanging out in each other's dorm rooms and we would start these deep talks about trying to see where they overlapped, and not out of competition, but it really was that heart of, like, is it okay to worship and fellowship with you and have this conversation? Like, are you fully aware of who Jesus is based on your denomination?
Right.
And those conversations would like go on, and it wasn't anything of downing one another. It really was curiosity because we really wanted to know.
But you did kind of start from a place of like, I need to see, because at this point, I'm thinking I'm probably right.
Yes.
Like, I know exactly
Right.
how to actually worship Jesus.
Right.
Let me educate you, or maybe
Right.
see if there's something there.
Well, it wasn't even let me educate you, right? It was all of how do we move forward with not offending you because we felt like we was right. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How do we move forward?
Right.
And then gently prove our point that we were right.
Right.
And we all approached each other that way, right? We all did.
And we're just talking about denominational distinctiveness
Yes.
within the church.
Yes.
I love what you said, though, is that relationship was what paved the way to knock down some of those walls.
Yes.
Because I think denomination is a lens, especially within the Christian world, right? And, political party, major lens, right? Race is a lens. And I think it's one we hear, obviously we hear a ton about, and we have a ton of growth and empathy and understanding and a lot of words that we could fill in that we need to grow in, not just as America, but I think globally.
Yes.
But I think some of the principles apply in all of these issues, Lena, where like, are people really, really racist? There may be some racism, but like, I think some of the lack of relationship, the lack of empathy, the lack of understanding, the arrogance brought to race, it's actually some of the same posture that we have over denomination or whatever thing that is dividing us. Do you think some of the principles are at work in both arenas?
Yes. So I often say this phrase. I just always try to say, I pray people could see the fullness of Christ and the fullness of community, right?
Okay.
So what does community look like, right? To understand life and experience it through the eyes of other people, and to be intentional about trying to walk in somebody else's shoes, not only for understanding, but sometimes they might need you to advocate for them, right? So that's kind of how my life is designed. So it's easy for me to sit here and say that, because that's how my life has been designed. And when I said okay to Christ, and when I am obedient and walk out those paths, I can see clearly, right? But what if I was somebody that was like, I don't want to see clearly. I want to be disobedient. I don't want to embrace the path that Christ gave me. So then we become blindsided, right? Like we just, we have a blind spot and we don't see that. And that's across anything, whether it's race, class, denomination, various relationships, status. I can remember, honestly, when I was a single mom and my boys were younger, right? People would invite you to do stuff, and I'd be like, and it was at church. I'd be like, yep, single mom. They'd be like, oh, you can sign up to serve, but let's see. It took me, I remember volunteering, and it took weeks for them to find a volunteer slot for me because the husband and wife would always serve on the doors together. They had to wait for another single person to be available. And I was like, they never understood that lens. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I remember going to Wednesday night classes. Classes would start 30 minutes before childcare would open, right? And so I'd be going, and they're like, you're late every week. Yes, because when your spouse is taking the kids to drop them off at childcare and classes started, I'm still with my kids. Doesn't make you wrong. You just have no perspective. And then I had enough courage to say something, and they go, oh, We didn't realize that. So they just shifted the times. So it's across the board. It's not only just race or whatever, it's status, all like your single status or your married status or whatever. There's always blind spots that people can't really see.
And what you're saying in that situation is it's not like the intentions were good.
Yes.
They were just uneducated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How much would you say, as we look at other issues that divide us, when you look at political or you look at racial or you look at social, how much do you think could be like in your betting on the goodwill of humanity? Mm-hmm. What do you think the percentages of people that they don't want to stay divided? They want to understand empathy. They want to move things forward, but they're at a place where it's like, I have good intentions. I just don't know. I'm just ignorant. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to do something good, but I don't really know what I'm doing.
Right. I can't really give you percentages on, the general public. I can only tell you about the people in my life, right?
Yes.
And in the circles that I roll in. And a lot of it is just a percentage of them, I would say maybe it's 50-50, right? Yeah. And the other thing is the reality is when you talk about intentions, people judge us by our impact. And they don't judge us by our intentions. So my intention could be like, hey, Daron, look, you look sick today. How are you feeling? What's going on? And my intention is to show care, right?
Right.
And you be like, well, thanks for telling me I look like crap. You're not going to judge my intention. You're going to judge my impact.
Yeah.
How are people experiencing me, right? So a lot of people don't realize that because somebody will say real quickly, well, that wasn't my intention. I understand. We're not judged on our intentions. We're judged on the impact you have on us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And intentions might be good, but it's all about that awareness. Once again, it's awareness. Like, how are we showing up in, like you say, the everyday spaces and places of people's lives, and what is our impact? And most of the time, we're not aware of how we're showing up and how people are experiencing us. The more you understand how people are experiencing you, the more you can adjust to get to the relational connection that you need, right? And that takes a level of humility and servitude that doesn't come naturally to human beings, period. And I don't care what color, class, and whatever you are.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Humility is a choice.
Yes.
And it's sometimes not the first one we choose as humans.
Well, I think it rarely is, and I think it's a situation where whether it's you're coming from a perspective of feeling like you're the more powerful person in a situation, or whether you feel like you're the weaker, minority in a situation. I don't mean minority by race. I'm just saying, as you're looking at it, there's a level of humility that has to be brought to the table to bring a togetherness on both sides of not feeling elite, but at the same time not feeling like, maybe it's the judgmental. There's that judgmental judging of intentions and impact that happens on both sides of that. But I think it's very difficult to get people, to get their minds around that. Like, how do I first and foremost, step into this divided issue first with humility and an actual level of grace. And that's something I've seen, in your life, Lena, that I feel like I've learned, and it makes me long for us as a culture to understand grace, and not like, yes, it starts from understanding that you're forgiven and the free gift of God, grace. I'm not saying anything small about the grace of Jesus. What I'm saying is to actually allow the fact that I have experienced the grace of God to show up, that I can actually be gracious when someone's impact has been hurtful to me. And I think relationship does make that possible, but it seems to be such a missing element in how we deal with each other culturally.
Well, part of that goes to, and you speak about this a lot of times, right? It's that spiritual DNA. If you know who you're created and designed to be, and you're confident in that, right? No matter what somebody else says to you and things of that nature, right? You can still be okay and can see them and give them grace. My grandmother used to say, it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to.
Hey guys, quick commercial break here halfway through the episode. Want to encourage you to get this PDF that I talk about in this series, of the Divided series. And what it is, it's a 2-page PDF I want to send you. You just get it by emailing at info@blackbirdmission.com, info@blackbirdmission.com, and just put in the message lenses. Because what this is, a 2-page PDF, it's going to help you really take some looks at your life of how much in your life are you viewing through the frame of fear, and what would it look like if you were to begin to see your life through the lens of love, the lens of Jesus. And I think it's going to be a great little PDF just to give you some time to get curious, to get compassionate, and to get some perspective on what lenses may be actually inhibiting your ability to be a great bridge builder. I want to send this to you for free. Just go to email us at info@blackbirdmission.com. In the subject line, just put lenses PDF. We'll send it to you immediately. Thanks so much. Let's get back to the interview. Lena, I love that quote from your grandma. And so is that more about, like what I hear you saying is that's more about identity, the depth of your sense of identity that gives you the ability to like knowing that I've received grace, knowing who I am in Christ, I can approach these situations with a level of grace because I'm not bringing my sense of identity from all of these external lenses or the other lenses prior to the lens of Christ.
Yeah, so I don't have to be defensive. I don't have to be defensive, right? And when you say that, I can look at you and grant enough grace to say, my first response is generally, for me, my first response is they just don't know any better, right? And it's not personal. They just don't know any better. And because if I can look at that from that and have a lens of grace, like they just don't know any better, instead of them saying something to me and me going straight to being defensive, it shuts down any opportunity for discovery and conversation, right?
Yes.
So when people say things and there's a difference of opinion, honestly, that's just what we kind of like on that conflict continuum, right? Yeah. It's just conflict. It's just basically differences. At the core of what it is a difference. Now, how that conflict kind of escalates depends on your ability to, kind of either kind of coach or kind of just be able to have that conversation appropriately so you can keep it de-escalated, right? So if there's somebody can say something and that's a difference of opinion, whether it's religion, whether it's, political, whether it's faith-based, whatever. So then that's the time, that first stage there is just a time of discovery. Tell me more about that.
Why can't we respond like that, though? My take is that it's the core of it, and my take is fear.
Yeah. Fear. Fear, and we're human.
Well, yes, we're human, but to figure it out, like, what is it? Yes, I'm human. I'm sinful. I've fallen. All those things. But like, I'm responding defensively. I mean, yes, it's maybe seated in ignorance or maybe arrogance, but there's a part of it where I may not even realize it, but I'm afraid of being wrong. When I'm afraid of losing power, I'm afraid of losing prestige. I mean,
it's you're afraid of all that, right? Power, position, ego. It's all of that. It's all of that. But in order to be like Christ-like, right, we truly have to see other people the way he sees us.
Yeah.
And that's easy statement, right? That's what we say in Christianity, right? But the reality is, especially if you walk this walk, and especially if you've been on this journey for quite some time, we should be, able to do that.
Yeah.
It's different from somebody that's just been introduced into the faith. But for people that have been in the faith for a while, you should be able to look back over the years and see where you've grown in these areas and where you've matured in your relationship with Christ. Because if you have a mature relationship with Christ, you feed off of that on how you treat his people, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a part too where, I don't know, I guess growing up in the church, at least from my perspective, is a lot of sermons about like, don't, smoke or drink or chew or date girls that do. Like it was about, like these, your classic, here's what Christians don't do. We don't cuss, we do whatever. But like not a lot of, we're Christians, here's what we do. We bridge the gap between people groups and differences and bring peace and unity. But it's like, you look at so much of what Jesus taught. I was just listening today to the parable of the Good Samaritan. Like what Jesus was doing, guy was like, hey, what do I have to do to get in the kingdom of God? Well, love the Lord, God's heart, soul, mind. Okay, yeah, I did that. Well, hey, wait, who's my neighbor? Right? And then Jesus tells him a story that makes him readjust and reexamine his lenses. Samaritans can't be heroes of stories. Oh, this is how we see it. They're dogs. That's not art. And then here's Jesus saying, hey, why don't you try this lens on? Like this. And so I don't know. I just feel like we have a lot of work to do within the church of saying, hey, maybe we chill out on, and now I don't hear a lot of sermons about don't smoke, but I'm just saying some of the behavioral modification, morality type of discussions.
Right.
And let's maybe go to a little bit deeper to like, how do we step in and be actually agents of grace and reconciliation in the world that right now is desperate for somebody to show up with humility and grace and empathy?
Yep. And that's a large charge, what you just said there.
Absolutely.
It's a large charge. And not everybody wants it, right?
No.
Because our first nature is to be comfortable.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I won't lie. Like I tell people generally when I show up, whether it's in friendships, relationships, professional, community things, the way my life is designed, right? I'm generally designed to show up to say the hard thing. But usually that's easy for me to say because people are naturally attracted to me and I can build relationships quickly, right?
Yeah.
But for somebody who that's not their norm,
Yeah.
like who wants to do the dance of conflict?
Yeah.
Who wants to have those hard conversations? Who wants to, it is like, let's just be honest, it is draining to live deep.
Yeah.
It is
good,
draining
Lena.
to live deep.
Yeah.
And it is so much easier to be superficial.
Yeah.
Right? And the reality is, when we show up at church on Sundays or whenever the day of the week we come in there and all of that, right? Are we really showing up our authentic selves, or is there that facade we want to wear ourselves in front of everybody?
Yeah.
So if you're focusing on not being authentic, so your attention's already taken. And it's not like as humans, we got a lot of attention span in the first place. And thanks to COVID and technology, it's really out the window. But if you're focusing on your image first, like how do you have anything left to say, oh, now I got this residual to focus on really authentically interacting with these people, right? It's harder to live, that authentic life.
It really is. I mean, that you could just chew on that for a while. I mean, that is because it feels so much easier to just be like, you know what, like life's hard anyway, and I'm going to just stay back here with all the lenses that feel comfortable to me that I know that I don't have to think about that much. Try to eke out my existence and just go on with my life.
Right.
But I think what and where I wanted to get to, to kind of as we come to a close in our conversation is where we came back to, that Sunday is love is what compels us.
Yes.
And it's relationship. Like, just our friendship and our relationship. There have been times where just in conversations in the office or whatever it could be, and sometimes it was more heightened crisis type conversations. But being in a friendship with you and growing in my love, in my appreciation, in my respect for you, like through proximity and through intention, there were times that I got to borrow your lens. You know what I mean? And maybe you got to borrow my lens, and but it's been the relationship and the love that has motivated me to go, I can't stay comfortable because I care too much about Lena. And I don't know, it makes me sad. I feel like how many people are stuck in just staying in their own tribe for fear of a long litany of things and what they're missing out on, the opportunity to actually grow in empathy, love, grace, compassion, perspective.
So, but when you look at it though, those times that we've gone to a community function together and you have been the minority in the room and you've experienced something, like you wouldn't have experienced those memories, those connections, those relationships, and that, like, there's also a joy on the other side of that discomfort, like leading up to some, I won't lie, I've certainly had him in some very uncomfortable situations. you know, Anybody though that's attached to me will say, Lena has, the Lord leads me into these places where people have to be stretched.
Yeah.
The reality is, was it my goal, right? To be urban, like an urban woman, then going suburban and now driving the roads of rural America? Nope, nowhere on my radar.
Right.
But generally, the people that God allows to come into my life, we sit back and we laugh about these uncomfortable situations, about these diverse experiences, and how they were challenging at first. But on the other side of it, there is a great level of joy and growth. And like when you leave this world, wouldn't you want to say that you have represented Christ well and that you have lived this life, every drop of it, and that you didn't only just have a limited view and a limited experiences, but you have lived it well enough that your impact, and I'm not saying famous, I'm not talking about famous, I am talking about impact, that your impact has been multiplied through relationships, and then that your life was fuller on the day that you leave here. And I just laugh because we have a ton of stories where we're like, Jesus got jokes. But on the other side of the uncomfortableness, right? Like, you don't only learn from me because God's not lopsided. I've learned from you too. Like, I've expanded, I've gotten to see things, and there's benefits both spiritually and naturally, right? From when we engage in these relationships outside of our own. The reality is God created us all. And he created the diversity in experiences, the diversity in race, class, and I mean, all of that. It's there since the Bible. But it's all for the building of who we are. And whether you choose to take the full experience or just half of it, that's a choice. But I will say, on the other side of the fear and the other side of discomfort, there is great memories and great impact.
Well, great memories, and I feel like when you start to see that impact, and you realize you're becoming part of the solution, not part of the problem, and there's a great joy in that. Lena, we close out. I want you to speak to somebody, and when we talked about this, when we did the sermon together, it was more about helping somebody maybe take their first step into understanding how to be a bridge builder or somebody that bridges the divide. What I'd like you to do today is speak to someone who may be in a role similar to yours. Maybe maybe all their lenses are completely different, but God has led them to be, because God has uniquely led you and gifted you to be someone who stands in the gap and reaches both sides and helps people meet in the middle. There's no doubt. And I think it's an anointing and a calling God has in your life, and you've done it very, very well. It's been a joy to watch. And I'm excited to see, in the next 10 years, what adventures God takes you on. But somebody's listening and they're in that kind of space and that kind of calling that you have, which can be tiring, which is difficult, which requires a lot of grace and patience. And how would you encourage he or she who may be living a life similar to where you are, where they find themselves as someone holding both sides of the aisle?
Right. First it is, know what you were created for. Like, I can't live this diverse life and go where God has led me if I wasn't first settled in what he put me on this earth for. You have got that identity piece is crucial, because from that everything else flows. He created me for this. So when you show up in those tiring situations, it's in those situations that you really get rejuvenated, because you're like, this is mission right here. This is purpose right here. So the first thing I would tell anybody, especially in this role, is know what you're created for. Because when the challenges hit, because there are some challenges, you won't be shook, right? You really won't, because then you'll be like, no, I am clear. This is what I am designed to do. And so I would first say, get clear on your identity. Find some people that will take that journey with you, that are open. Like, you guys were open. Even now, I'll have these conversations with you and you'll be like, oh yeah, but you're open. You never reject my side, right? You got to find people that are open, because you won't always find people that agree with you 100%. but that person of peace.
Yeah.
Where are your persons of peace?
Yeah, because you can't do it alone.
Can't do it alone. And he didn't call us to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So find that support group, find the people, not saying they agree with everything you say, because they will not, but find those people of peace that can help you, right? And continue to be intentional and challenge yourself. Like, there is nothing that I share out of my mouth that I don't have to walk out myself.
Yep.
So if you're going to live a life divided like that, where you want to say but not do, that will not work. Not in this type of work.
Yeah.
Because you have got to be authentic to what you're saying and doing. But those are the steps. And then, mark the journey. Write the lessons down, because the reality is he didn't give it to you just for you to do that. There are others coming, and you need to be able to multiply that knowledge, multiply that encouragement, and you need to write the story, because you're not the only one that's going to be doing it.
Yeah.
But your ability to have impact here and then leave something. When he's moved you on to the next thing, that's important to do.
So good, Lena. Lena, thank you so much for being with us. I always say it, I love our conversation. I love our friendship. I'm excited to see what other adventures we get into. We should probably just do an episode where we just tell,
the
stories. But they're great. They're some of my favorite memories. And what's been great, Lena, is my friendship with you. You have given me access to rooms and relationships that I would never have been afforded on my own. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that you can say that in my account, but my life is so much richer and so I hope more people that maybe have more of my lenses, get blessed to have a friendship as gracious and as empowering as yours has been with me. And so thanks so much for being on the podcast. Appreciate your insight. We'll do it again.